The pot was too heavy for a starving girl to carry, yet Amora lifted it anyway, her thin arms trembling beneath the weight of something that could save her life or destroy it. Gold coins spilled over the clay rim, catching the afternoon sun like scattered stars, and every person who passed the riverbank stopped to stare. Her feet, bare and cracked from years of walking hot village paths, stood frozen in the shallow water as her mind screamed two words over and over, "Keep it. Keep it." But her grandmother's voice, distant now like smoke from an extinguished fire, whispered something else entirely. A person who finds what isn't theirs and keeps it has found nothing but trouble. Amora's stomach twisted with a hunger so deep it had become part of her bones, a hollow ache that made her dizzy and desperate. The gold could buy food for a month, a year, perhaps a lifetime, yet here she stood, dripping and uncertain, about to do something the entire village would call foolish. She had come to the river as she did every evening, balancing an empty clay pot on her head, moving quietly so her Aunt Fulod wouldn't find another reason to slap her or deny her the watery soup that passed for dinner. Amora was 16, though she looked younger. Hunger had a way of stealing time from the body, leaving a girl with the frame of a child and eyes far older than her years. Her parents had died when she was 7, taken by the fever that swept through the village one cruel season, and since then she had lived with her father's sister, a woman whose heart had turned to stone long before Amora arrived. Aunt Fulod had 3 daughters of her own, plump and loud, who were bright rappers and never missed a meal, while Amora slept on a mat in the back courtyard and ate only after everyone else had finished, if there was anything left at all. She had learned not to cry, not to complain, not to expect kindness, but she had never learned to stop hoping that somehow, someday, things would change. And now, standing in the river with a pot of gold in her hands, change had arrived in the cruelest form, a test she wasn't sure she could pass. Amora climbed the riverbank slowly, her legs shaking not just from hunger but from the impossible weight of the pot pressing against her chest. Water dripped from her wrapper, leaving a dark trail in the red dust as she walked toward the village center, and with each step, more ice turned her way. Women pausing from pounding cassava, men resting beneath the baobab tree, children chasing each other with sticks, all of them stopped and stared as the ragged orphan girl carried a fortune through their midst. "Eh? What is that Amora is carrying?" someone called out, and soon a small crowd began to form around her, circling like vultures sensing something dying. She kept her eyes forward, her jaw set, even as her vision blurred with exhaustion and fear. She had decided what to do the moment she pulled the pot from the river. She would find the owner, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost her. It was the right thing to do, the only thing her parents would have wanted, even if every fiber of her starving body screamed at her to run into the forest and disappear with the gold forever. By the time she reached the center of the village, beneath the ancient Iroko tree where elders gathered to settle disputes, at least 30 people had followed her. Their voices rose in a cacophony of disbelief, greed, and mockery. "That girl has found gold. Where did she get it? She must have stolen it. No, she pulled it from the river, I saw her. Foolish child, why didn't she hide it?" Amora's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs, but she steadied her breathing and raised her voice above the noise. "Please," she called out, her voice thin but clear. "I found this pot in the river. It is not mine. I am looking for the person it belongs to." The crowd erupted in laughter. One man, his belly round and his teeth stained red from chewing cola nut, stepped forward and sneered. "Girl, nobody is going to claim that pot. You found it, it's yours. Take it home before someone with sense takes it from you." Another woman, her wrapper bright yellow and her neck heavy with beads, shook her head in exaggerated pity. This is what suffering does to people, it makes them mad. Look at her, shaking like a leaf, refusing gold that could change her life. But Amora stood firm, even as her legs threatened to give out beneath her. She knew what they thought of her, the orphan with nothing, the girl who scrubbed floors and fetched water, the one nobody believed would ever amount to anything. But she also knew something they didn't, that her worth wasn't measured by what she owned, but by what she chose to do when no one was watching. And even though everyone was watching now, she would not betray the person she truly was. Aunt Fulod pushed through the crowd like a storm breaking over dry land, her face twisted in rage and something else, greed, sharp and glittering in her eyes. "Amora," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the murmur of the gathered villagers. "What foolishness is this? You bring shame to my house. She reached for the pot, her thick fingers grasping at the clay rim, but Amora turned away, protecting it with her body even as her aunt's nails scraped against her arm. The crowd fell silent, sensing the drama unfolding before them, and Amora felt the familiar sting of humiliation rising in her throat. Her aunt had never defended her, never protected her, never once treated her as family, but now, with gold involved, suddenly she cared very much what Amora did. "Auntie, please," Amora said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "This is not ours. I must find the owner." Fulod's laugh was harsh and bitter, a sound like cracking wood. "Owner? You stupid girl. There is no owner. The river gave it to you, it's yours. Bring it home now, or I swear by all the ancestors, I will beat you until you cannot stand." But Amora did not move. She met her aunt's furious gaze with something the older woman had never seen before, defiance. Not the quiet, sullen resistance of a mistreated child, but the calm, unshakable resolve of someone who had made a decision and would not be moved. "No, Auntie," Amora said softly. "I will not take what is not mine." The words hung in the air like a slap, and for a moment, Fulod seemed too shocked to respond. Then her face darkened, and she stepped back, pointing a trembling finger at her niece. "Then you are no longer welcome in my house," she spat. "You choose gold over family. You choose strangers over your own blood. Fine. Sleep in the streets. Starve in the dirt. See if your honesty feeds you when you have nothing." She turned to the crowd, raising her voice so everyone could hear. "Let it be known, this girl is no relation of mine. Whatever happens to her now is her own doing." With that, she stormed away, her daughters trailing behind her like shadows, leaving Amora standing alone beneath the Iroko tree, the pot still clutched in her trembling arms. The villagers murmured among themselves, some shaking their heads in pity, others in disbelief, but no one stepped forward to help. Amora felt the world tilt beneath her feet, felt the last thread connecting her to safety and shelter snap like a dried vine, but she did not cry. She had cried enough in her life. Instead, she tightened her grip on the pot and lifted her chin. If she was going to lose everything, she would lose it with her dignity intact. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple, the villagers' curiosity turned to something darker. Men began to circle Amora with proposals disguised as help, their voices smooth and persuasive, their eyes lingering too long on the gold. "Sister," one of them said, his smile wide and false, "why suffer like this? Give me the pot. I will keep it safe and help you find the owner. You are too weak to carry it much longer." Amora shook her head, stepping back as he reached out. Another man, older and wearing a faded agbada, leaned in close and whispered, "Child, listen to wisdom. The river gives and the river takes. If you found this, it was meant for you. The spirits don't make mistakes. Keep it, buy a house, marry well, live like a queen. No one will blame you." But Amora's voice, though tired, remained firm. "It is not mine to keep." The man's face hardened. "Then you are a fool," he said coldly, and walked away. One by one, they tried, with kindness, with threats, with logic, with shame, but Amora would not be moved. The women were no better. Some whispered loudly enough for her to hear, their words sharp as stones. "Look at her, acting like a saint. She thinks she's better than us. Pride will kill that girl before hunger does. If I were her, I would have run to the next town by now." A few younger girls, emboldened by the crowd, began to laugh and point, mocking her torn wrapper and dusty feet. "Amora the Holy One," they sang in cruel harmony. "Too good for gold, too proud to eat." But the worst came from the children, who had once played with her before her parents died, before poverty had marked her as different. They threw small stones at her feet, not to hurt but to humiliate, chanting a rhyme they had made up on the spot, foolish girl, carrying gold but staying poor. Foolish girl, the river laughs at you some more." Each word was a tiny blade, cutting deeper than hunger ever could, but Amora stood still as a tree in a storm, letting the mockery wash over her without response. She had learned long ago that silence was sometimes the only shield a powerless person had. And so she waited, the pot growing heavier with each passing moment, her body swaying slightly from exhaustion, but her resolve unshaken. Because somewhere, deep in her heart, she believed that doing the right thing mattered, even if no one else did. The sky deepened into the rich purple blue of approaching night, and the marketplace began to empty as people drifted toward their homes, their laughter and chatter fading into the distance. Amora remained beneath the Iroko tree, her legs finally giving out as she sank to the ground, the pot resting in her lap like a sleeping child. Her arms burned, her back ached, and the gnawing emptiness in her stomach had become a living thing, clawing at her from the inside. She hadn't eaten since the morning before, a handful of thin porridge her aunt had grudgingly given her, and now, as darkness gathered around her, she wondered if she had made the greatest mistake of her life. The gold glinted softly in the fading light, mocking her with its promise of comfort, safety, abundance. She could still take it. She could still run. No one would stop her now. Most of the village had gone home, convinced she was mad or cursed, and those who remained watched from a distance, unwilling to involve themselves further. But even as the thought whispered through her mind, she pushed it away. Her parents had raised her to believe that character was the only thing poverty couldn't steal, and she would not dishonor their memory by becoming someone they wouldn't recognize. Just as the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, a figure emerged from the path leading toward the river, a figure so bent with age that at first, Amora thought it might be a shadow taking shape. The old woman moved slowly, leaning heavily on a gnarled walking stick, her wrapper faded to the color of dust, her head wrap slipping down to reveal thin wisps of gray hair. She was small, frail, the kind of elder who seemed almost transparent, as if the world had worn her down to nearly nothing. Amora struggled to her feet, her heart suddenly pounding with a mixture of hope and dread, as the woman approached. The few remaining villagers fell silent, watching with renewed interest as the stranger stopped before the girl and the pot. "Child," the old woman said, her voice cracked and dry like leaves underfoot, "I have heard that someone found my pot." Amora's breath caught. "Your pot, grandmother?" The woman nodded slowly, her eyes, sharp and bright despite her age, fixed on the clay vessel. "Yes. I lost it in the river 3 days ago when I went to fetch water. My hands are not strong anymore, and it slipped from my grasp. I thought it was gone forever." She reached out a trembling hand, her fingers hovering above the gold. "This pot belonged to my mother, and her mother before her. It is all I have left of my family." Amora felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow wash over her, but before she could speak, a voice rang out from the small crowd that had gathered to watch. "How do we know it's yours?" a man called out. "Anyone could claim it now." Another joined in, "Yes. Prove it belongs to you, old woman, or leave the girl alone." The old woman turned slowly toward the voices, her expression unchanged, neither offended nor surprised. "Proof," she repeated softly, almost to herself. "Yes, I can offer proof." She gestured toward the pot with her walking stick, her movements deliberate and unhurried. "Look at the bottom of the clay. There you will find a mark, 3 straight lines carved in a triangle, with a small circle in the center. It was made by my grandmother's hand when she first shaped this pot, many generations ago. It is the mark of our family." Amora's hands shook as she carefully tilted the pot, mindful of the gold still shimmering inside, and examined the base. There, just as the old woman had described, were the marks, faint but unmistakable, one smoothed by time but still visible. 3 lines, a triangle, a circle. Her heart sank and soared at the same time. She had found the true owner, which meant her search was over, but it also meant she would return to the night with nothing, not even a place to sleep. Still, she did not hesitate. She lifted the pot with the last of her strength and held it out toward the old woman. "It is yours, grandmother," Amora said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am glad I could return it to you." The old woman did not immediately take the pot. Instead, she studied Amora's face for a long, searching moment, her sharp eyes seeming to see through skin and bone into the very heart of the girl before her. The villagers leaned in, waiting, their earlier mockery replaced by a tense, expectant silence. Finally, the old woman spoke. "You carried this pot through the village, child. You were mocked, threatened, and rejected by your own family. You are starving, I can see it in your eyes, in the way your body sways. This gold could have saved you. Why did you not take it? Amora swallowed hard, her throat dry as sand. Because it was not mine, she said simply. My parents taught me that what we take without earning becomes a curse, not a blessing. I would rather be hungry and honest than full and false. The old woman's lips curved into the faintest smile, a soft expression that transformed her worn face into something almost beautiful. And now, child, will you accept a reward? Surely I owe you something for your trouble, for your honesty, for your suffering. But Amora shook her head, even as her stomach clenched with desperate hunger. No, grandmother. I did not return your pot for a reward. I returned it because it was right. Please, take it and go in peace. That is enough for me. The old woman's smile widened, and for a brief, startling moment, her eyes seemed to glow with an inner light that had nothing to do with the setting sun. Child, she said softly, you have given me the answer I was searching for. And before Amora could ask what she meant, the air around them began to change. The wind rose suddenly, swirling around the Iroko tree in a way that had nothing to do with nature, carrying with it the scent of rain and wildflowers and something ancient, something that made the hair on Amora's arm stand on end. The old woman straightened slowly, her bent back unfurling like a leaf opening to the sun, and as she did, the years seemed to fall away from her like a discarded cloak. Her wrinkled skin smoothed, her grey hair darkened and thickened, her frail body grew tall and strong, until standing before Amora was not an elderly stranger but a figure of impossible beauty and power, a woman whose presence commanded the very air, whose eyes shone with the light of stars, whose voice, when she spoke again, resonated with the depth of thunder and the gentleness of a lullaby. The villagers gasped and stumbled backward, some falling to their knees, others fleeing in terror, but Amora remained rooted to the spot, too exhausted and too stunned to move. I am Oya, the woman said, and her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the space beneath the tree and echoing across the village. Guardian of the crossroads, keeper of storms, protector of truth and justice. I have walked this land for countless generations, testing the hearts of mortals, searching for those who remain pure even in the depths of suffering. She gestured toward the pot, and it began to glow with a soft, golden light that had nothing to do with the coins inside. This pot was never lost, Oya continued, her gaze never leaving Amora's face. It was placed in the river as a test, a measure of character, a way to separate the worthy from the false. Many have found it over the years, strong men, wealthy merchants, cunning women, ambitious youth, and every single one of them took it and ran, believing themselves clever, believing the river had favored them. But they were wrong. The gold they stole turned to dust in their hands, their good fortune withered, and their names were forgotten. She stepped closer to Amora, who could barely breathe, barely think, barely understand what was happening. But you, child, you who have nothing, you who have been beaten and starved and cast out, you who had every reason to take what was not yours, you chose honor over survival. You chose truth over comfort. You chose to protect a stranger's property even when your own family abandoned you. Oya's hand, warm and steady, reached out and touched Amora's cheek, and in that moment, the girl felt every ache, every pain, every wound, both physical and spiritual, begin to heal. For this, Oya said, her voice soft as silk and strong as iron, you will be rewarded beyond measure. The pot in Amora's hands grew warm, then hot, then blazed with a light so brilliant that she had to close her eyes against it, and when she opened them again, everything had changed. The gold coins were gone, replaced by something far more precious, seeds that glowed like tiny suns, each one pulsing with life and possibility. Amora stared at them in wonder, and as she did, Oya's voice filled her mind like music. These are not ordinary seeds, child. Plant them in the soil of your choosing, and they will grow into a garden that never withers, never fails, never hungers. The yams will be as large as a child's head, the cassava will multiply with each harvest, the vegetables will ripen in days instead of months. You will never know hunger again, and neither will those you choose to feed. Amora's eyes filled with tears, but before she could speak, Oya continued. And this, she said, waving her hand over the pot itself, which began to shimmer and shift, its clay surface smoothing and brightening until it gleamed like polished bronze. This vessel will remain with you always. Whatever you need, water, oil, grain, medicine, you need only ask, and it will appear. But remember this, Amora, the pot will only give to those who give to others. Hoard its gifts, and they will vanish. Share them freely, and they will multiply forever. The transformation didn't stop there. Amora's torn wrapper dissolved like morning mist, replaced by a garment of deep indigo cloth embroidered with patterns of gold thread that seemed to move and shift in the light. Her cracked, dusty feet were suddenly adorned with simple but beautiful sandals, and around her neck appeared a single bead, small, unassuming, but radiating a warmth that seemed to settle deep in her chest. This bead, Oya explained, touching it gently, carries the protection of the ancestors and the blessing of the spirits. No harm will come to you as long as you wear it, and those who seek to hurt you will find their own malice turned back upon them. Wear it with humility, and it will serve you well. Wear it with pride, and it will leave you. Amora wanted to speak, to thank this divine being who had seen her, truly seen her, when no one else had, but her voice failed her, choked by emotion and disbelief. Oya seemed to understand. She placed both hands on Amora's shoulders, her touch both firm and gentle, and looked into the girl's eyes with an expression of infinite kindness. You have passed a test that few even recognize as a test, she said. You have proven that poverty does not equal greed, that suffering does not destroy goodness, that even the smallest and most forgotten among us can shine brighter than gold. Go now, Amora. Build the life you deserve. Feed the hungry, shelter the lost, protect the weak. And know that you are never alone, the spirits walk with you, the ancestors watch over you, and your parents smile upon you from the world beyond. With those words, Oya stepped back, and the wind rose again, swirling around her in a column of light and air, and then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. The night was still again, the stars bright overhead, and Amora stood alone beneath the Iroko tree, transformed, blessed, and forever changed. The villagers who had remained to witness the divine encounter stood frozen, their faces pale with shock and shame. Slowly, one by one, they began to approach Amora, their earlier mockery replaced by trembling reverence and fear. They fell to their knees before her, their voices rising in a chorus of apologies and pleas. Forgive us, Amora. We did not know. We were blind and foolish. But Amora looked at them not with anger, but with a sadness that ran deeper than any grudge. She had learned something in her years of suffering that they had never understood, that cruelty was often born of fear, and mockery was the weapon of the insecure. She did not hate them. She pitied them. Stand up, she said quietly, and though her voice was soft, it carried a new weight, a new authority that came not from the bead around her neck or the pot in her hands, but from the purity of her heart. I do not need your apologies. I need you to remember this day. Remember that the person you despise today might be the one who saves you tomorrow. Remember that kindness costs nothing, but cruelty can cost you everything. They rose slowly, shamefaced and silent, and drifted away into the night, leaving Amora alone once more. The next morning, Amora walked through the village with her head high, the pot resting easily on her shoulder as if it weighed nothing at all. She found a plot of abandoned land near the edge of the forest, land that no one wanted because the soil was said to be cursed, and there she planted the glowing seeds. Within hours, green shoots began to push through the earth, and by evening, the field was lush with plants that seemed to hum with life. Word spread quickly, and soon people came from every corner of the village and beyond, drawn by rumors of a miracle. Amora did not turn them away. She harvested yams and cassava, filled baskets with vegetables, and handed them out freely to anyone who came with honest need. The orphans, the widows, the sick, the elderly, all found their way to her door, and all were fed. But when the greedy came, those who had mocked her, those who had tried to trick her into keeping the gold, they found that no matter how much they took from her garden, their baskets remained mysteriously light, their food spoiling before they reached home. Amora did not curse them, the pot magic simply knew the difference between need and greed, and it responded accordingly. And so Amora became not a ruler, not a queen, but something far more powerful, a protector, a provider, a living testament to the truth that the most valuable treasures in life are not the ones you can hold in your hands, but the ones you carry in your heart. Years passed, and Amora's garden grew into a legend. Travelers came from distant lands to see the girl who had been blessed by the spirits, and each one left with a story to tell and a lesson to carry. Amora herself remained humble, living simply in a small house she built with her own hands, sharing her abundance with all who needed it. She never married, though many sought her hand. She claimed she was already wedded to a greater purpose. The pot never failed her, providing water during droughts, medicine during plagues, and grain during famines, and with each act of generosity, Amora's name became synonymous with grace and goodness. The village of her birth, which had once turned its back on her, now thrived because of her, and the people learned, slowly, painfully, that true wealth is not measured in gold, but in the legacy of kindness we leave behind. When Amora grew old, her body finally succumbing to the weight of years, the villagers gathered around her one last time, and she smiled at them with the same gentle strength she had shown as a starving girl beneath the Iroko tree. "Do not mourn me," she whispered. "I have lived a full life, richer than any treasury. But remember this, the pot was never magic. The seeds were never enchanted. The only magic was in choosing to do what was right when it would have been easier to do what was wrong. That magic lives in all of you, if only you are brave enough to use it."